Metaphysics of gold and silver in the Vedic tradition. The two metals are not treated as simple commodities. They function as visible expressions of deeper forces, cosmic order, and its disruption, abundance, and corruption, divine power, and human desire. Gold receives far richer narrative and symbolic development, whereas silver appears more sparingly and often in complementary or archetypal roles. Together they form a polarity that's not fully balanced, reflecting the Vedic world's preferences and unresolved dualities in some cases. Gold, the radiant and corrosive. Gold is the more metaphysically charged of the two metals. It appears as both the substance of primordial perfection, but also the catalyst for strife, greed, and fate. The Golden Age and its fracture in the Valsupa. In the early stanzas of the Valsupa, the Aesir dwell in a state of golden sufficiency. They play at the tables, lack nothing of gold, and fashion their tools and temples from it. This is not mere wealth, it's a visible sign of a close, sufficient, divine order before conflict enters the world. The arrival of the three giant maidens ends this age. Gold here marks a lost purity, an original luminosity that cannot survive contact with the outside. For example, in Valhalla, the Aesir eat with golden silverware. Gold as living power. The most explicit personification occurs in the Valsupa. Gold might, gold power, gold drunkenness. Enters the halls of the Aesir. They spear her and burn her 3 times, yet she lives again and is revealed or reborn. The bright, shining seeress who practices and delights evil woman. Scholars have long noted that the thrice burning invokes the refining of gold by fire. The metal is purified, yet emerges more potent. Golvig is therefore not simply a goddess or a witch. She is the disruptive, intoxicating force of gold itself. Her presence participates the first war among the gods, the Aesir-Vanir War. Gold in this myth is an active, almost autonomous power that cannot be destroyed by ordinary violence, and that spreads both magical capacity and social rapture. The Cursed Horde in the Advirant. In the heroic material, Snorri's prose retelling, that's the prose Edda. The dwarf Andvir's gold, especially the ring, and Invernat ring, is bound by curse. Once taken by force, it generates a chain of betrayal, kinslaying, and monstrous transformation. Fanfir becomes a dragon to guard it. Here, gold is tied to Orlog, fate or destiny. It amplifies desire until the desire consumes the owner. Possession becomes a metaphysical test that almost no one survives intact. The metal does not merely attract greed, it is the visible form of a fate that unfolds through greed. Manipulative and sacrificial gold. Odin's ring produces 8 identical rings every 9th night. It is laid on Baldur's funeral pyre and later recovered. In Skaldic keenings, gold is frequently called Draupnir, that's Odin's ring, Draupnir's drop. This gold is generative, knightly, and sacrificial, an emblem of inexhaustible divine abundance in the Lord's capacity to receive rings. It stands in deliberate contrast to Anvir's sterile, death-dealing hoard. Another example of gold in the Eddas is Sif's golden hair. Sif's hair, cut by Loki and replaced by dwarven gold that grows like living hair, is widely understood as an image of ripe grain fields. Gold here is solar, fertile and regenerative, an earth-bound abundance restored after violation. The doors can produce it, linking the metal to both the heights of Asgard and the depths of the earth. Across these episodes, gold emerges as a double-edged force. It can manifest primordial order, fertility, and royal generosity, or it can manifest intoxication, curse, and the unraveling of kinship in the cosmos. The Eddas never resolve the tension. They present both faces as inherent to the metal. And so then this is the characteristics of silver. Silver receives a less dramatic treatment. It lacks a figure comparable to Gullveig and is rarely the central engine of a myth. Its metaphysics must be read more indirectly, from architecture, material, culture, reflected in the poems and occasional pairings with gold. One of these examples is the Hall of Four Cities Hall. This is a god who is associated with both silver and gold. This hall is described with pillars of gold and a roof set with silver. This god is associated with justice. He settles strife and gives just judgments. The pairing is significant. Gold, the solar active and disruptive metal, forms the supporting structure, while silver forms the shining covering. Silver here participates in an architecture of clarity, reflection, and resolution, rather than of conflict or multiplication. It is the metal of the settled word, and the ended quarrel. Here's another example of silver. Silver is used for oath rings. Although the strongest evidence is archaeological rather than mythological, the Vedic world presupposes a culture in which silver oath rings were central to binding speech and loyalty. Silver thus carries connotations of the spoken bond, the measured pledge, and the social fabric that holds clans together. where gold often appears as the object of violent seizure or intoxicating desire. Silver more often functions as the medium of reciprocal obligation. Relative valuation and circulation. In the broader Norse cultural horizon, reflected by the Eddas, silver was the more practical and widely circulating precious metal. Gold tends to appear in myth as exceptional, numerous, or dangerous. Silver appears as the everyday precious substance of exchange, ornament, and oath. This practical difference solely shapes their symbolic weight. Gold is the metal of extremes, silver the metal of measure and continuity. So unlike esoteric systems that firmly assign silver to the moon and the feminine, the Eddas do not develop an elaborate lunar silver mythology. The moon itself is treated more as a celestial body and timekeeper than a silver working power. Any lunar associations remain secondary rather than explicit. So gold would be associated with the sun, whereas silver is associated with the moon. So the polarities of the two metals. So when the Eddas place gold and silver side by side, they suggest a complementary rather than identical relationship. Gold tends toward the solar, the generative or destructive extreme, the intoxicating, the fateful, and the exceptional. Silver tends toward the reflective, the binding, the clarifying, and the socially sustaining. Gold is the metal that can start wars and birth dragons. Silver is the metal that can end strife and seal oaths. Gold multiplies or curses. Silver measures and reflects. The tradition does not present them as equal twins or balanced opposites in the alchemical sense. Gold dominates the metaphysical imagination. Silver occupies a quieter, more structural and social register. In short, the etic metaphysics of these metals is asymmetrical. Gold is a double-edged power that both illuminates and unravels the world of gods and heroes. Silver is its less dramatic counterpart, associated with justice, the given word, and the shining surface that covers and completes the golden structure. Together they map a vision of precious substance that is never neutral. Every gleam of metal carries the possibility of order or of its undoing. Now to the next section, the core kinning system. So Snorri states the poetic logic explicitly. Gold is called the fire of the arm, joint, or limb because it is red, while silver is called snow, ice, or frost because it is white. This is not a later invention. It is the systematic way skalds were taught to refer to the two metals. The color and elemental pairings are therefore native to the tradition. Gold, red, fire, luminous, burning quality. Silver, white, snow, ice, frost, cool, reflective, pure quality. Red gold Old Norse poetry almost never calls gold simply yellow. It is called red gold. This reflects how the culture characterized hue. Gold was perceived and described as warm, in contrast to cool white metal, white steel. The phrase appears throughout the sagas and poetry as a standard, elevated term for the pure or highly valued gold. So, pure gold is red gold. Other types of gold were called yellow gold or white gold. So, architectural pairings, pillars of gold, roof of silver, combination associated with balance and justice. Other cosmic echoes. The larger Vedic cosmos is itself founded on the meeting of fire and ice. While the poems do not directly equate gold with fire or silver with ice, the caning system quietly echoes the primordial polarity. Gold carries the fiery, generative, destructive. Silver carries the cold, clarifying, binding purity. What is not strongly present? So there is no traditional Vedic link between either metal and the color blue. Blue appears in the context of Hell's half-course. Certain poetic descriptions of the sea or sky, but it's not generally associated with either gold or silver. Silver is not given an elaborate lunar mythology in the Eddas the way later esoteric systems do. Its primarily poetic identity is white, with cold snow, ice, and frost. And finally, gold's fiery association is poetic and visual, not claim that gold is elemental fire itself. In short, the most important additional layer you should know is that the native skaldic pairing recorded by Snorri, which is gold, red, fire, silver, white, snow, ice, and frost. The color and element system sits underneath the more dramatic mythic episodes and gives the two metals a consistent sensory and metaphysical contrast within the Etic worldview.